Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Front Royal Town Council Forum. This is something that the Warren County Republican Committee has been doing for years. I can tell you, years ago, being in Warren County Republican politics, I always wondered why the town council didn't have any Republicans on it. And it really didn't. We had lots of people on there that claimed that they were independents and that this race was a nonpartisan race. And just common sense tells you that Front Royal is full of Republicans, and the Republican voice here in Front Royal will be heard. So we decided, I don't know how long it's been, eight years ago, that we were going to, the Republican committee was going to endorse candidates for town council and mayor. We've been very successful in picking and choosing good candidates to run and endorsing the right ones as well. We've had very good success with our endorsements out of this committee. At this time, I'm going to ask each candidate to give a one-minute opening statement. We'll do the questions and opening and closing statements opposite of which way I start. So we'll start with Mr. Scott Lloyd for an opening statement. Thank you.
Should I stand or?
Yes.
Okay.
Please
Hi, I'm Scott Lloyd. I've been a resident in Front Royal for 10 years now. I've lived here with my wife. We came with 2 kids, and since our family has expanded to 8. I'm an attorney by profession. And my experience has been in Washington, D.C., serving since 2004 conservative causes. That's included religious liberty, pro-life causes, but also I've been involved in issues at the border as a Trump administration appointee from 2017 to 2018. Because of my involvement in D.C., I've been a commuter for much of my career, and as such, even though I've been able to participate in Knights of Columbus, even being a Grand Knight, I was a board member on the Front Royal Pregnancy Center and an active member of the St. John Baptist Parish. I've also somehow managed to keep a bit of a low profile. But now here I am really committing to our local community and taking the experience that I've learned in Washington, D.C. in the Trump administration in my various roles as an attorney and as a volunteer, putting them to work for the town of Front Royal, and hopefully doing the best I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. And now we'll have town council candidate Joe McFadden.
Good evening, everyone. I've lived in Front Royal since 2014. Moved here with my family specifically for the town, and in particular for some of the private school options that are available here that we didn't find in Northern Virginia. My wife and I both work for the federal government full-time. She's with the U.S. Marshal Service in the director's office there, and I've been with the EPA since 2011, before that with the DoD as a civilian. And backing up a little bit further, I serve my country currently in the Virginia National Guard out of Winchester, and before that I was in the United States Marine Corps. Served 1 tour in Iraq in 2005. I also currently, so I have a lot of things going on. I'm a pretty busy person. People who know me know that I'm a fairly busy person that likes to get involved. So one of the ways I got involved here in this town was I joined the Town Planning Commission. I'm currently serving as the Vice Chairman of the Town Planning Commission. I think we've had a very successful group on that board. I think we've done a lot of good things in what we've done over the course of the past 4.5 years where I've been there. I also opened a business here locally. That was a big step off for me into risk and also a big commitment to this town. I really believe in health and wellness, and I believe it starts with families and fitness. So I opened a gym on Jackson Street. I purchased the old Schul's Furniture Building, and for the past year and a half now, we've been building that business. And I truly believe that one of the main voices that's missing from the town council is someone who is a local businessman, who understands that and can not only reach out to other local businessmen and women and ask them for their input and ask them to form coalitions, but be part of that coalition to understand their needs, particularly, not necessarily exclusively in the downtown area. So that's about what I'm bringing to the table here. I've got a lot of experience in different fields, and I'm hoping to be a good candidate for you all to serve on the town council and continue the good work we've been doing so far. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. And now we'll have town council candidate Lori Cox.
Thank you. So, good evening. I've met quite a few of you. So, my name is Lori Athey-Cockle. I was born and raised in Front Royal. My husband, we've been married 24 years. We've been blessed with 2 children, Blake and Ansley, both graduates of Warren County High School as myself. I hold a Bachelor's of Arts degree and a Master of Science degree. I've used those to educate children for the last 30 years. So that's my profession. Being a teacher, I feel like that's given me an opportunity to serve families and the children in our community, and being able to be on the town council would only further my commitment to the community, and watching those children grow into productive citizens, which I've already been witnessing. I think my first students are now 40 years old, and so they're moving on. So I was appointed to the town council in January, my fellow town councilman, and I would like to have the opportunity to spend another 4 years. I feel like we've accomplished a lot, even though a majority of the last months have been focused on the coronavirus. We've still been able to come together and serve our citizens and help people out, which is a part that I love about this community. So I just appreciate being able to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And now we'll have mayor candidate for town of Front Royal, Chris Holloway.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm seeking the Republican Party's endorsement for mayor of Front Royal. My wife Jill and I have been married now for 4 years. We share 5 children together. We have 4 grandchildren. We're both small business owner here in the community and have been for quite a few years. As for my community service, I was once first time elected to town council back in 2008, 2012. The last 2 years I was vice mayor of the town of Front Royal. I've also mentored thousands of children over the years as coach of Front Royal Soccer Association. Also coached Skyline High School, and with the Front Royal Soccer Association I've held many positions, one being its president. I'm also a past member of the Front Royal, or I should say Warren County Parks and Recreation Committee. When I last served on council, I should say the first time, there was a lot of issues. We had I&I issues. We had redundant water line talks, and this was over 10 years ago. And finally, on this term I'm serving now, the council that we have, we're moving in the right direction, and we're taking care of those issues. Finally, the I&I issues are in the process of being resolved. Redundant water line is in the process of being taken care of, among other things. And also, we've created, or I should say that we had a half-cent tax decrease. How many times has that happened? I haven't heard of it happening at all here in town. And I can tell you, as your mayor, I would strive to keep the new council heading in the right direction, and that's forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, now we're going to start with the questions, and we're going to go from Mr. Holloway back to Mr. Ward. Each question I'm going to read once. I can read it again, but each question is going to be for all the candidates. So once I read the question, every candidate will get 1 minute to respond to the questions, and there are no rebuttals or responses going back and forth. Okay. So first question. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the Democrats are calling for huge tax increases. This year, our Front Royal Town Council reduced taxes. What is your position on the Front Royal tax rates? Chris?
Well, I mean, we gave the citizens a half-cent tax decrease. And with doing so, we were able to maintain a high level of service as before. I've never voted for a tax increase, and I never would. And that just goes to show you that creating a tax decrease, we're still able to provide the citizens what they deserve.
Thank you. Lori?
Yes, thank you. As Chris pointed out in his opening remarks, the council that we're currently serving on was able to reduce taxes, and as he said, that doesn't happen very often. And I'm really proud of that. I felt like that was an accomplishment that we could be proud of. That was not done lightly, and the way that had to happen was we really had to look at our government and where things needed to be restructured or cut back to be able to get the best money from the best bang for our buck with the town taxpayers' money. I also believe in my own budget, my own home, I operate off the idea that we get what we need and sometimes we get what we want. And I think that I look at the town's revenues and sources as though they're all of ours. And I would operate the same way I would with my own budget, that there will be things that we absolutely need that maybe in the past people overlooked, but now we're not. And we're gonna focus on getting what we need. But some of the wants and some of the extras may not be the right time for us. So I believe in keeping our taxes low. I don't believe in raising taxes, but I also believe sometimes you have to look in the budget and find the fat to get rid of, so.
Thank you very much, Lori. Joe?
So a few years ago when I was on the Town Planning Commission, we were presented with the town budget. And they let us look over some of the items that were up for approval. And I think it was an oversight that they let us see this, but I kept raising issues about some of the expenditures that they were making. For instance, buying the IT department had a new SUV to drive to and from his house. There was a couple other items on there that I just flagged as like, why are we spending money on this? That's how I kind of look at a lot of things. I've had to really trim my budget in opening a business, which I put a lot of money, personal money into. And every time I come back for a new permit, I come to the town for something, I get hit with another fee, something else. That it seems like we have a lot of these fees, collecting all these things. We're not promoting businesses, we're not promoting things. So if we just keep spending. I see that I did approve the plans for the police department. The Town Planning Commission saw some of the issues. We raised some issues with that too, but we went ahead and we spent that money. If we talk about lowering taxes, we have to talk about stop spending. This is the biggest discussion that happens nationally, happens all over the place in the country. We as a small town can't be a tax and spend town. So we need to really look at what our expenditures are, and I have experience doing that. My first year with the EPA, I came in there with process improvement background coming from the military, and I looked at our budget and what we were spending, some of the IT systems, and I found $250,000 annually that was being spent, congressional funds brought into the Office of Water EPA, and then being distributed to another part of our agency that didn't get congressional funds and relied on us to fund them. There's money there. We need to figure out what can be cut and really take a hard line on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Scott?
So the issue of taxes at the town level is one of the places that I think it may be in danger of being most pernicious, because when you're talking at the town level, you're talking about things that sound so harmless. As Lori was telling in one of our previous meetings, a glass of wine here and there, a half cent here and there, but the way that I look at that is to put it in the context of the rest of the taxes that our residents have to turn around and pay. So it's not just the town, it's also the fees on top of that, as Joe was mentioning. It's the county, it's the state, and then it's the federal. And people are working too much to pay the government, and we need to, at the local level and at every level, look at every dollar and cent that we're spending and find whatever savings that we can. In the federal government, I was able to do that, and one of the things that I saw is the enemy, the biggest enemy there is inertia. Things have been going this way for so long that we just can't change things. And over and over again, consistently and with a dogged determination, I think it's possible to win those arguments, but you're going to receive pushback. You're going to receive pushback at every dollar. But I can say that in the administration of my office in the federal government, we were able to identify significant savings, and we were part of a process that saved the taxpayers millions of dollars. And so that's the approach I want to take to Front Royal. There are no cute tax increases. I'm committed to not increasing taxes on our townspeople.
Thank you, Scott. All right, now we will have our second question, and we'll start from this end. Scott, we'll go back to Chris this way. We have all seen the violence, rioting, and looting in the Democratic-controlled cities and calls to defund police departments. Here in Front Royal, we have had 2 peaceful protests. If these protests were to turn violent and call for the defunding of police, what would your position be?
No way. That is one thing that I am committed to not cutting in any way. I want to make sure that the police have all the resources that they need. One of the things you can't tell about me, I come from a family of police. My brothers are both police officers, excuse me, and my father as well, and my mother for a time. My deceased uncle were all police officers. And so defending police is something that is natural to me as defending my own flesh and blood. And so I'm going to make sure that I do everything that I can to support the people who are putting their lives on the line to keep us safe, period.
Thank you, Scott. Joe?
Well, if I want to keep peace in my household, I'd have to say I never defund the police. My wife works, as I mentioned, for the U.S. Marshal Service. We're very committed to the police in general. I've had a roommate, one of my best friends, he's down on SWAT down in North Carolina now, started out in Fairfax County, lived with us for a time while he was a beat cop. My uncle was a DC police officer. This is not really an option. Defunding the police is a narrative, and we need to be better than that narrative.
Thank you, Joe. Lori?
Yes. Defunding the police. First off, I just think that's absurd. When I first saw mentions of that in the media, I thought it might just be, a one-shot deal, and then it just keeps getting repeated over and over again. Watching all the violence that we're seeing is even more of a reason why we shouldn't even be thinking of defunding the police. The reason why we did have, in my opinion, 2 peaceful protests in our community is because our law enforcement officers worked with those people that were organizing the protest. The relationships that our citizens have with our law enforcement is one of respect. And I think that's another reason why it was peaceful. In my opinion, not only would I like to not defund the police, I wish there was a way for us to find more funds to support these hardworking men and women in our community that right now seem to be taking a lot of grief that they don't deserve. So I'm grateful that we have this safe community to live in. It's one of the, in my opinion, one of the best aspects of our community is it's a great place to raise our kids and live, so.
Thank you, Lori. Chris?
Yes, I know, as Lori was saying, I thought it was just a one-shot thing when I first heard of defunding the police. But you turn the news on and you see people basically beating officers up, throwing stuff at them, and nothing's being done. And that's, democratic cities, states. And I know we did have the 2 peaceful protests here, and I know our town and county departments work together. I actually met with the organizers of the protest during, well, before, while they were organizing the first one, I should say. And, you know, I just think it's great when you have an open line of communication like that, when they can come and sit, we can discuss everything, discuss their routes, and everything went really smooth. You know, being in this community is, I think, like 67, 68% conservative, says a lot. We don't have that kind of, you know, destruction here in our community. So defunding the police, never.
Thank you, Chris. All right, now bring us to question number 3. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, better known as AOC, are calling for a huge new Green Deal. Growing bureaucracy, more regulations, and trillions in spending. This year, Front Royal consolidated positions and departments, reducing the size of government. What is your position on the current size of the town's government? And should we continue the trend of smaller government, or should we adopt the new green approach? Chris?
Well, everybody says the less government, the better. You know, being on town council, you make decisions that aren't always easy. And, you know, we saved over $500,000, I believe, by doing by adopting our new budget. That's allowed us to do many things here in town. As I mentioned before, you know, our I&I, our infrastructure. It's never easy to make cuts. But like I said, these people here to my right, if they're elected to council, they're going to see what I'm talking about. A lot of people think that you can do anything you want just because you're sitting up there, and it's not the case. But believe me, we all do, I really believe, what we feel is best for the community, for the citizens. So I just, they'll see. So.
Thank you,
I
Chris.
already see a little bit.
Yeah, you see a little bit. Yeah, she does. She realized it right quick. It's not as pleasant as you would suspect.
Lori?
Yeah, so as a fiscal conservative, I always believe in less government, the smaller government, as Chris said, better. Individual rights to me are the most important, and anytime you're growing your government, it's going to infringe on those rights. So I think that you alluded to, you know, some of the cuts that we made, and I think I mentioned that earlier. So they weren't done lightly, and people, you know, I was grateful to hear Joe talk about like looking at things, because, you know, sometimes a fresh set of eyes are a good thing to be able to see things. So I think looking at cuts that could be made while maintaining our services, because that's really important too. So I don't think government should be any larger than what's necessary to provide those services for our citizens and to maintain the quality of services. And as Chris said, every decision is not easy. I don't think the cuts were made lightly. But saving money and being able to turn around and return that to our taxpayers was the right thing to do. So.
Thank you, Lori. Joe?
During my time in the past 4.5 years on the Town Planning Commission, I've seen a lot of redundancy within the local governments, and that's county and town. We have, as a town resident, you know, I even see it in the redundancy in my billing that I get 2 times a year when I get taxed twice. You know, I feel like there's a redundancy in services, and in certain meetings I would ask, has anyone coordinated with the county on this? And I would be told by the staff employee, the town employee, that, oh, no, that's a good idea, we should do that. And, you know, we're already too far down that line where that decision had already been made, or it was already rolling forward in the county. So I think that some more reduction could happen. I appreciate the efforts that the current council has done, But I do think that if you consider all processes, how they work intertwined between the county and the town, what are some of those that you could reduce in order to reduce the overall government? And perhaps, liaisoning, working better with the county could help that. Funny story, the whole reason why I ended up on the Town Planning Commission was a friend of mine, he had a problem and it turned out it was in the county. He asked me to join, to help him sort it out, become involved, all of this, it was a plead. I did it, I came in, I took the class, I served, and I realized, hey man, I said, this was in the county, this is a whole county issue we're dealing with. So there's a lot of misunderstanding also within the town, within the county, of who is responsible for what. And I think a little better communication could help our citizens understand that. And that could lead to a little less fear on this idea of cutting government. Because honestly, folks do fear cutting government, even though it's in their best interest.
Thank you, Joe. Scott?
The proposed budget this year, it started out with a factoid. I've been trying to find it again, but I thought it was really fascinating and kind of teed up the issue nicely, and that is, over the past 10 years, the population of the town has grown about 6%, and the size of the government, the expenditures, has grown something in the neighborhood of 15%. I don't want to misrepresent those numbers, but that's my memory of what they are. But the overall point is, something's very much out of whack, and we need to take a look and say, is it really the case that the need for services grew in such a disproportionate way to the size of the town government? I'm going to guess that if we take a line-by-line look at the way that the town is spending the money and the way that we're doing that in light of the county expenditures, like Joe was saying, then I think we're going to find a lot of opportunity to right-size those trends. I think we've made good progress this year with this year's approved budget. We need to continue that success. And so to the original question, yeah, I think that's a trend that we really need to continue to shrink government rather than expand it and have it do everything for us.
Thank you, appreciate it, Scott. Okay, we have a fourth question, and we're going to start with Scott. There have been calls from the Democrats to remove the memorial at the courthouse honoring those from Warren County who died during the Civil War. What is your opinion on these calls for removal? How do we preserve our history in a time when it's under attack by anarchists and Marxists who would like to rewrite it in favor of a reconstructed version?
Sure. I think that we need to be sensitive to issues of race, but I think that the removal of that statue, the Warren County statue, is very much the wrong approach. And one example of what I mean by that, or how I came to these conclusions and everything, is the example of my own family. My grandfather grew up in Virginia, and he named his second son Robert Lee Taylor. Robert Lee Taylor grew up and had his own family and was hoping for a son, never got that son, and so his last daughter, her name is Robin Lee Taylor. And this is after General Robert Lee. And I didn't have the opportunity to meet my grandfather, but I do not receive any reports that he was some vehement racist or anything along those lines. I think that you cannot shunt off to the side the issue of slavery in the Civil War. It was really central, but human nature is really complex, and to reduce that all to, and I think the family affections that people have, and the affections of geography, and the additional issues of states' rights and everything else. The bottom line is that was a very complex conflict, and to kind of look back and judge our ancestors first for the decisions that they made in the heat of the moment, and then also how they processed that through time as they look back on their parents who fought on one side or the other of the Civil War. I think that a position and an attitude of humility toward that is the right approach. And so I think it's the more humble and respectful position to take, to leave things as they are and look to the future for opportunities to continue the process of healing, whether it's racial or any other sort of wounds that our country has experienced over time. But I don't know, I firmly do not think that the process of tearing down things is the way to go, is the way to healing.
Thank you, Scott. Joe?
So, Scott talked a lot about, he covered a lot of my points, but primarily, the nuance of the Civil War. It's so misunderstood. The who fought, why they fought, who was on which side. We've come to a stage where we have so much information available to us, and yet, out there, people just believe what they're taught, whatever they're told immediately without questioning it. And we're seeing that pressure. We're only 65 miles outside of DC. Of course, we're getting pressure. This is a great point to test this. It's already happened in Richmond. Our governor, of course, is bowing down before these groups. It's happening all across the nation, and it's leading us into a state of disorder. That's not the America that I know, and that's not the America that I want to see in the future. If it were to come to it, it should come before a referendum, before it gets torn down, before any elected or appointed body here in the county makes any decisions, and that should be in an open forum, not in behind closed doors and in closed sessions, and it should be very clear, not as it seems to be headed in a very disguised manner, from what I've heard. This is something that could come before the people. Personally, statues I don't believe hurt people. I don't believe that the men named on that statue were slave owners, as far as I know. They're probably just Virginians defending Virginia. And if they're like any of the grunts I know, they just fight because they're dragged into it or they feel the call to. They don't look at the politics of it, and I'm sure that was the case back in the 1800s as well.
Thank you, Joe. Lori?
Yes, oh wow. I'm going to say this may very well be the most challenging question of the evening. Thank you, whoever came up with this. I say it's a challenging topic because I think that there's a lot of passion on both sides of it. One thing that I agree with Joe is that I definitely think it should be left up to individual areas. I think when, the governor is saying, passing something, or somebody saying everybody has to get rid of statues or memorials, I don't think that's fair. I think it should be left up to the individual people. One thing I want to share with you all as a teacher, so for 22 of my years, I taught Virginia history the whole year. And it was, trying to explain to children that time period and what was going on really taxed me often, because they live in a time where they can't fathom any of the horrific situation that they would read about in a book. One thing I also remember distinctly is I had a colleague that moved in, and at that time we didn't have a lot of resources, so we had an old book, and I would seek out things, but she loaned me a book that she had from her teaching earlier in her career, and she lived in a northern state. And when I got to the chapter on the Civil War, it was so vastly different than our chapter in our book. And I think that's probably when I realized that it depended on who you were hearing it from and what you were internalizing. So I do know in regards to the memorial and at our courthouse that the people listed on there were members of our community. And I just had this conversation with a family member recently that if you go to the courthouse, there are other areas there where there's other memorials for other members of our community that have passed away during battle. And so while there's lots of discussion as to what the purpose of that monument was in the early 1900s, I do believe that the people listed there, it was more about remembering them and the sacrifice they made. I applaud the county for offering, even though it's a non-binding referendum in November, because the citizens themselves will get to speak and share their own voice. And I would say those who have one opinion or the other will have the opportunity to get that information out there. For me, I would not remove it. However, I am not offended by the statue, and so therefore we were encouraged by a fellow council member when this topic came up to have uncomfortable conversations with other people. And I've asked many of my friends and even family, people of color, that, how do you feel about that? And I've gotten a variety of responses too. So for me, I wouldn't remove it, but there are other people that are more offended by it than myself. But I think having the people make the decision is the best way to go.
Thank you, Lori. Chris?
It's a county issue. That's the easy way. No,
Chris, it seems you're the most experienced.
Honestly, it's not a town, it's not a council or a mayor issue. It's nothing that the council can solve. And it is a county issue, and us in town, we're county citizens. So, myself personally, I lived here my whole life. I had never heard one bad thing about that monument there. It has never been an issue, not until democratic city-states started burning and trashing their own communities. And I feel like they were using whatever they could as an excuse to do so. To me, Chris Holloway, the citizen of Front Royal, I feel like it's a memorial for the 600 soldiers that died. But again, the county has it on the ballot as a non-binding referendum. And I'm good either way, whichever way the citizens want to go with it. But to me personally, I wouldn't do anything with it. If it was a monument glorifying the Confederacy, it's a different story, but it's not. It's a memorial for the 600 fallen individuals here in the community. And at that time, we weren't the United States. So.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, we have one last question. We're moving right along. Okay, what is your position on the democratic laws that are being passed by Virginia legislation that will allow towns or counties to pass their own laws that will make it illegal to carry a firearm in that town or county? Chris.
Oh.
Sorry about that. I lost track of where I was at.
Aren't we glad we sat in the middle?
Yeah, Steve, you go I'm all for carrying, open carry, concealed carry, and I think it's states allowing the communities to pass their own ordinances. I think it's their way of saying, they don't want the responsibility. I think it's the easy way out. And I'm pro-gun all the way, and I feel like you should be able to walk anywhere in any community and carry your firearm as long as you're qualified. And I really think it's the easy way out for them.
Thank you, Chris. Lori?
Yep. So I think what separates us as a country from other countries are, is our Constitution states what our rights are, and we have the right to keep and bear arms. That's our right. My dad always, I can hear my dad saying this so many times about, be careful when they start taking away that, then it just, they're just next, something else will come along. And so I think about that. I think that gun control advocates, and which are obviously pressuring these democratic cities and states, they're blaming the guns instead of the people and the evil, and that's the part that I think we need to fix. Those are the things I think we need to work on. We need to educate, and we need to, actually, I think we need to return to more traditional family values, but I think there's a lot of things that that address those issues, but blaming the guns for the evil, I saw a meme recently on Facebook about that preventing drunk driving would be like taking away the license, taking away everybody's driver's license, and it's kind of relatable. So we've passed the sanctuary city as well as the county did, and I got to be honest with you, I never ever thought Virginia would even be talking about this, but here we are. So for me, I think that we need to just stand strong, and I think during the session, there were many people very surprised how many people showed up at the Capitol in a safe way. I know you were there,
I was
Steve,
there,
as well.
yes.
So I think we just need to stick to our guns. That was
Yeah,
not
that's
the
good.
right pun, but anyway, sorry.
Thank you, Lori. Joe?
I think that we've kind of let this happen to us as a nation. We look at it and we don't fight for our rights to the point that, how many people in here are open carrying now? Is there anyone here? Does anyone have? I mean, we need to really step it up a level where we do active education, or we need to be proactive. The Democrats are very proactive about education and educating. I mean, I just saw my kids have Disney Plus. I've got it in the house, and I just learned about a character on there that's promoting values that are contrary to my religious beliefs. And I'm thinking to myself, it's coming from every direction. We need to be more proactive in the other direction. We need to get like a Young Marines here in town. We need, why don't we have a range in town? I know there was plans a while back or something like that. We should have a range that outmatches the one in Fairfax at the NRA. Have something, teach sport hunting, make it easier for people to hunt, create, again, I don't believe that's the role of the government, but I believe it's the role of the community to rise up into that role. And if supported by the town and county governments, then I think we could have something like that. I bought a hunting rifle from the flea market here in town, and I still haven't had an opportunity to go hunting. I'm somebody that has carried a weapon in a foreign land to defend this nation, and I still have yet to go hunting for deer. I just can't find anybody outside of the small pockets of people who've been here for a very long time and doing that. I mean, we should have more of that community involvement and community action. I should be able to take my son out and fire pistols on a range instead of having to drive to West Virginia or someplace else. Let's be proactive about this. Let's counter the narrative, counter the Democrats, and push it instead of passively saying, yes, we support the Second Amendment. Let's instead do an education campaign on that end. I think that's what we can do in this party.
Thank you, Joe. Scott?
So this is going to continually be a flashpoint where the Democrats are going to try and take any ground that they can, and they're going to be continually creative, and we've got to be prepared for that. We have to expect it, and we just need to be able to have the conviction to stand up and say, when that debate comes to our town, we're not going to give up any of our rights, which the Supreme Court clearly We might have a need for an open carry right now. Sounds like everything's okay. But the Supreme Court articulated that this is not only the right to a militia, it's the right to independently arm yourself and defend yourself. And if you take the natural meaning of the amendment itself, then you're going to be able to protect yourself. And if you read the decision from 2008, DC versus Heller, you're going to take it to the natural conclusion that you have the right to defend yourself as you go about your daily life. And in one of the contexts that I've served in as an attorney in a foreign land where ISIS was actually expanding their territory, one of the gripes of the local town that had been victimized was to say that the government that was supposed to be protecting them at the time, only weeks before ISIS arrived at their door, as a safety measure, disarmed the citizens. And they were left defenseless when terror arrived at their door. And they were left with the options of of being killed, becoming enslaved, or fleeing, having all their possessions robbed in the process. And so this is not just an ethereal discussion. This is how thugs, terrorists, and tyrants gain an advantage over freedom-loving people. And so that's why we need to remain vigilant.
Thank you. Okay, now that we have all the questions, we're going to go to the closing statements, and this is the first time I'm going to break rank and come back to Chris for his final closing statement, and then we'll go down this way. 1 minute closing statement, Chris.
Well, I just want to say that I'm very proud of my record with town council, especially the last year and a half, being able to reduce taxes, still maintain a high level of service for the community. And I know as mayor, I'll continue keep council moving forward in the right direction. And no more kicking the can down the road. Get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Lori?
Yes. First, I just wanted to say thank you to you all for holding this, the forum, and giving us all an opportunity to share some information about ourselves. And thanks for inviting me. As you know, I come from a long line of Republicans, grandfather, father, my siblings, and what I believe, or we believe, is, less government is always better, lower taxes, national defense, traditional family values. Those are things that are important to me. In terms of me as a councilman, I hope that people see me as I see myself, which is I have a natural desire to help, to fix, to problem solve, to try to find common ground whenever possible. I don't like divisiveness, and that's been something that I've attempted and still try to bring in all aspects of my life. I want to say that we have a very important election coming up on November 3rd, and while most people are focusing on the presidential election, I just want to say that the local elections are very important. The decisions that affect our lives, our daily lives, and make the most impact are the ones that are done at the local level. And so your vote and your support and my candidacy is very important to me, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Lori. Joe?
So as I mentioned, I moved to Front Royal because I saw it as a bastion of out in the wasteland of Northern Virginia. I saw it out there as a beacon, and I moved here on purpose. And I want to continue the tradition of Front Royal in that and how we do things. I really like it. Like I just have to say, like a lot of people I've heard, I read on social media, and it really drives me nuts. I see people who say, like, I left Front Royal, I'm so glad I got out of that town, and they make these comments, and I just wonder. And sometimes I click on their picture just to see, like, what happened in their life. Are they super successful now? Did they go off? And usually it's not the case. I want to stand And what Lori said about this election, like this is it. We're at this pinnacle of a point in time where it's either going to shift one direction and the whole house of cards falls, or we continue to push back, we continue to fight the good fight, we continue to move our community in the right direction. Yeah, it may be a terrible scene down there in Richmond, it may be just as bad in Fairfax and other places, but we have to remember here, this is where it matters. This is where it matters to my children. I have 6, and I'm 4 of them. They were just talking to them yesterday, because we're talking about how they don't even remember where we used to live. Like, this is it for them. Front Royal's their town, and it's my town. And I want to really help in any way I can through continuing my service, not only to the people of Front Royal, but also to my country. I mean, this is it. We're a conglomeration of states, as we talked about with the statue issue. We're a conglomeration of states that has come together in this to form a perfect union, and we need to continue at the local level pushing that and staying hopeful, not to get discouraged, and just continue here and do what we can to change the national dialogue at the smaller micro level.
Thank you, Joe. Scott?
So I didn't get to mention that I'm actually originally from New Jersey, but I went to college, undergraduate at James Madison University, and when I came down for my first candidates weekend, as you all are heading west on 66, I think you all know that bend where you come around, and it's right before exit 13, and it's kind of the first time where you get to look out over the mountains and kind of see it all stretch out before you. Now, as somebody who grew up next to the shore, this was just like I was on another planet. And I'm looking out and I'm like, this is incredible. And it just grabbed me. Little did I know that years later, that would be I was looking out over what would be my hometown. And actually, in some ways, Front Royal kind of came and found me. It was just circumstances. I don't believe in coincidences. It was just, we wanted to be out of Northern Virginia. We knew that, but we didn't know where we were heading. An opportunity brought me out here, and we've fallen in love. And since then, our kids have grown up here and come to love it as well. And I want to devote my time, my talents to making it a place that they can continue to call home and consider raising their family here as well. And coming to the DC area in 2004 and working in Washington, DC, I can remember as a young conservative being really on fire and working in Washington, DC on policies that I had high hopes for and others around me did. And watch leadership kind of kick things down the road. It was good policy. It was policy that the Trump administration later came in and immediately enacted. But we're talking about the end of the Bush administration, and just to feel that frustration, like there is no good reason for us to not be doing this. This is what we mean when we say that we're conservatives, and feeling that frustration. I don't want to do that to the Republicans in this town. I don't want to put you guys in that situation where you come in and you put your faith in me and say, like, why isn't he delivering? I know that frustration. I don't want to do that to you guys. I'm running as a conservative Republican, and I want to deliver for you guys. I'm going to hold myself to that to the best that I can with the grace of God, with your help and your support. So I hope you'll support me for the endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And I want to thank all the candidates for coming out this evening. I'd like to say, out of all the candidates that we've had throughout the years, this group has really got the issues down. They know what's important to the town of Front Royal, and I just want to thank you all for coming out, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.